Three socialists just got elected to Congress who want to abolish borders, seize production, and burn the Constitution. The Supreme Court shrugged and gave Trump a blank check on deportations because apparently that's what the law says. Justice Kagan just didn't feel like reading it. Birthright citizenship is a birthright citizenship, and it's not going away anytime soon. Iran's still lobbing drones at random ships in the ocean like it's Call of Duty. Brave move from a country that has zero control over its skies, and somehow, we're still the greatest nation on planet Earth. A country that's prevented 500 million deaths this year alone. It's beautiful chaos, as always. This is the Weekly Filter. I'm your host, Wes Clark. You're busy, so let's get into the news. If you're new here, as always, each story we present was filtered using 4 articles on the same subject, 2 from the left and 2 from the right, to leave you with just the overlapping facts. All comparisons were created using Claude artifacts in a closed prompt, and all secondary research is conducted using Perplexity. Links and URLs can be found at the Filter News Channel newsletter at www.thefilternewschannel.beehive.com. We have to start this week's episode on the biggest story from last week, which is 3 Democratic socialists being elected to represent New York in the House. And where better to present that from but New York City itself. According to CNN, Dissident Magazine, and 2 articles from Fox News, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani endorsed 3 congressional candidates, Brad Lander, Claire Valdez, and Darliza Avizela Chevalier. I don't know. All of whom won their Democratic primaries on June 23rd. Chevalier defeated chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus in New York's 13th Congressional District by approximately 4 points. Lander defeated Representative Dan Goldman in New York's 10th Congressional District by roughly 30 points. Valdez defeated Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso in New York's 7th Congressional District by more than 20 points. This was a slaughter. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who had supported the incumbent Democrats, said Tuesday that he and Mamdani had, quote, agreed to strongly disagree on those races. And I guess that's right, because after the biggest win, the crowds at these events started chanting for Jeffries' seat.
You're next! You're next! You're next! You're next! You're next! Some other kind of process.
These articles shared 72% compatibility, which leaves much room for political spin. So let's dive into it. We need to find some terms really quickly, because while Americans like to pretend like we are well educated, our reading scores are at an all-time low. So let's define them. Democratic. In politics, democratic refers to a system where government leaders are chosen through free, fair, and competitive elections with broad participation by citizens as voters and often as candidates. Socialist. Socialist refers to an ideology or system that seeks significant social or economic equality by expanding collective or public control over the means of production, major industries, resources, and infrastructure, rather than leaving them primarily in private hands. Communist. Communist refers to a more radical strand of socialist thought rooted in Marxism, which envisions a classless, stateless society where all property is collectively owned and there is no private ownership of the means of production. Now, with those terms defined, let's get into these 3 candidates. These candidates can hang on to the Democratic part of their name. After all, they were voted in, now only by the Democratic caucuses in New York, but still they are voted in. However, by their own admission, they are not Democrats, but merely using the Democratic Party to get into power.
Our candidates run as Democrats. We're on the Democratic Party ballot line. We contest the primaries, and when they're in the legislature, they're part of the Democratic Party caucus. But we don't agree with the way the Democratic Party establishment organizes or runs its party apparatus, and so we try to build independence.
This is a civil war within the Democratic Party. These are deep blue areas in New York, where I am right now, in a primary setting. This was a referendum on Democrats and an issue for the Democratic Party. Now, unlike the legacy media that nobody except me watches, because this is my job now, I won't jump into why this is so terrible or so amazing for the Democrats and the entire country. That wouldn't be very nonpartisan of me. Instead, with those definitions in mind, you keep them in mind, I'm merely going to share the views of these three soon-to-be House members. Because again, they won in areas that are only Democratic in the first place. There are no Republicans in these districts in New York. So let's get into what they stand for. According to Michael Schmierkanish at CNN, a left-leaning news outlet, all three want to extend full voting rights to non-citizens. Sorry, I have to stop immediately. Remember when Trump and his allies accused the Biden administration of wanting to allow illegal immigrants into the country so they could vote?
Like, in a nutshell, the Democratic Party wants to destroy democracy by importing voters. And the Republican Party disagrees with that.
And the ruse is that if you don't accept what they're doing, then you're a threat to democracy.
Yes.
So it turns out that's not a crazy viewpoint. CNN reports this, and the Democratic Socialists have it on their own website for you to see. Go to their website right now. So yeah, they want that. Next, open borders, immigration. Let migration freely without restrictive immigration controls, demilitarize the border, end all immigration, detention, and deportation, and grant immediate amnesty for all immigrants regardless of current immigration status. Wait. Sorry, again. Turns out that was the strategy. Let illegals in, no borders, and then let them vote. Again, right on the website, that's what they want. Public ownership of large corporations, the largest corporations, put under public ownership and democratic control. Great. People who have never had jobs will seize property against the Fourth Amendment, so fuck the Constitution, I guess. Also, socialism and communism both seize the means of production. The question is whether that's from a position of class struggle or not. But beware, terms have meaning. And this is already teetering. Next, free everything. Isn't it great? Debt cancellation, Medicaid for all at zero cost sharing, tuition-free college plus room and board, full student debt cancellation, universal child care, universal rent control. But of course, you still have to pay for your coffee, and make sure you tip your barista extra well, because the people suggesting all these things still need an income. Who am I kidding? These people don't have jobs. At least that was the case for Mamdani and Chevalier before getting into office. But what could go wrong? Free everything makes it sound more like communism. Now play a game with me if you don't believe me. If everything is free, which is the proposal, then there are no classes in society. If all corporations are publicly owned, then there is no private ownership of the means of production. And if there are no borders, then there is no private property and no state, which means it's a stateless society where all property is collectively owned. What was the definition of communist again? Communist refers to a more radical strand of socialist thought rooted in Marxism, which envisions a classless, stateless society where all property is collectively owned and there is no private ownership of the means of production. They may have been elected, but they are not socialists. They're democratic, but they're not socialists. Let's recap. The Soviet Union, 30 million dead. China in the 1950s and 60s, 45 million dead. Cambodia, 2 million dead. North Korea, 2 million dead. Vietnam, 1 million dead. Cuba, tens of thousands executed. Food lines, blackouts, Laos, 10,000 executed. Ethiopia, hundreds of thousands of dead. Afghanistan, hundreds of thousands of dead. And those are all communist societies in the past. They don't work. It leads to death and executions and food lines and blackouts. Are these three, two of whom have never ran anything in their lives, really so arrogant that under their control, only their control, things would be different? They are some geniuses that have superior thoughts that under their watchful eye, things would lead to prosperity, just like Marx envisioned. Right. Claire Valdez prioritized rebuilding the labor movement and getting every single worker into a union. And that's going to be priority number one for me when I'm in office. Her policy package includes ending at-will employment, a federal job guarantee, and a 4-day work week. Perfect. Everyone can work for the government. That's a socialist policy. I'm sure that's what happens in Scandinavia. Just like everyone likes to say, right? Bernie loves to say, oh, that's what they do in Sweden. Nope, absolutely not. That's not a thing. Nowhere on earth does everyone get a guaranteed federal job. That's called equality of outcome, a principle of the Communist Manifesto, not socialism. Valdez explicitly calls for dismantling and abolishing ICE, describing it as a tool for white nationalist repression. Housing a human right and should be treated as a necessity, not a commodity. I guess Obama was a white nationalist then. On healthcare, employer-based insurance gives bosses power over workers' lives, holding care hostage to keep wages down and trap people in jobs they can't afford to leave. And she pledges to sponsor Medicare for all on day one. So it's class warfare. It's a struggle between boss and employee. That's their worldview. There's no autonomy for the person who took that job. Of course not. And houses for all, just like candy on Halloween night, we can just give it away for free to every smiling face that knocks on the front door. But of course there are no doors because there are no borders. What about our darling girl, Cavalier? Archive tweets show her repeatedly using classic Marxist slogan like seize the means of production, in addition to favorable references to communism and Soviet-era figures such as Vladimir Lenin. Do you like Lenin? Probably not, because you're not a communist. She is, quote, not okay with any deportation, stating flatly, I think all deportation is wrong because I think it is an incredibly cruel punishment that is really only relegated to people on the basis of where they were born. Huh, yeah, kinda. She argues borders are a very modern construct and describes free movement as an ideal vision, contrasting capitalist ability to move freely with people being trapped. Modern concept. Have these people never read a book? Have they never taken a history course? How stupid can they be? Because they're absolutely stupid. And I mean absolutely stupid. They've never read a book, except for the Communist Manifesto. In 2020, she boosted a tweet responding to a prompt, Israel suddenly disappears, your third emoji is your reaction, where she replied, trick question, Israel doesn't exist. Two-state solution though. Chavalier supports abolishing ICE entirely and opposes all forms of deportation, detention, and imprisonment as tools of the immigration system. She backs, quote, prison abolition and has amplified posts asserting that abolishing borders, prisons, and police is possibly necessary and the only moral way forward. You get your family member killed? Let's pay for that person's house, free housing. She reposted a message saying it's a world without borders, just like a world without prisons or police, is possibly necessary and the only moral way forward, and amplified it approvingly. Archive tweets show she repeatedly called to abolish police, abolish prisons, and dismantle international borders altogether, framed as the only ethical system. Great. No prisons, no borders, illegals can vote, no police to stop theft, but there is no theft because there are no jails. These are unserious people, but you sure as hell better take them seriously. And I mean absolutely fucking seriously. I mean that. I don't care your political background. These people will come in the night with a smug face, and when you turn your fucking back, they will slit your throat so quick you didn't know what was coming. That's how it happens. These are not people to be kind to or shrug off. These people will kill you, your family, your way of life, your purpose, and leave you with nothing. Likely, as it happened in every other communist nation, with your head in the dirt and a bullet hole in the back of the skull. These are the faces of death. And if you're too stupid to understand that, then there's no hope for the country. And I look forward to all the comments in my DMs. She reposted a message saying all pigs everywhere are haram, using the Islamic term for something forbidden in the context of attacks on police. Great, pleasant. Coming in the night, bullet in the back of the head. Coverage of her 2018-2022 post history notes negative views on interracial relationships and hostile language toward white liberals. Funny, that's who just voted her in. She'd rather wipe her hands on the American flag than use a napkin while calling nationalism itself violent. Yes, that's a real thing she said. She attacked Joe Biden during the 2020 campaign as both a rapist and a war criminal and called the US a country of fucking disgrace. So if you're a Democrat, she's not on your team either. Let's get that very clear. We've made it 250 years as a nation, and these people will come and be the end of it all if you allow it. Do not be kind to them. Do not welcome them into your home. And above all, do not pretend as though they share common values. They don't. You don't. This isn't new, and nothing has changed. Just because they smile and have a pleasant face doesn't mean they're your friend. Free speech only works if you drown out the bad ideas with good ideas. So, if you are a college student on a college campus right now in a class where a girl in the front row is spewing this garbage, don't sit quiet because some idiot in the back row thinks she's hot and smart and he's going to vote to try to win her heart. Save him. Save him weeks of pain and years of idiocracy. Save our country. This is an issue that should hopefully unite the Democrats and the Republicans because that's what will take to win. Don't believe me? Research the downfalls of any communist nation ever and you'll understand. That is a bipartisan view, and I know a lot of people are going to say it's not, but these people are not Democrats. They themselves have said they're not Democrats. They're certainly not Republicans. So anyone supporting this filth is not pro-America. These are not people who should be in office for America, because in order to be in the House of Representatives or in Senate or any power within the government, you have to take an oath to uphold the Constitution. Well, seizing private property and opening up the border is inherently against every fundamental legal and moral principle of our fucking country. So do not take this sitting down. Absolutely do not. Do what you must to shout them down, and not online. No one cares about the internet. I mean in person. If they're in your class, if they work with you, if they're in your family, do not allow them to get away with this crap. And when they call you a racist or a bigot or a homophobe for something that is otherwise an 80-20 issue, like, I don't know, having borders, tell them to go fuck themselves. Because in order to have a decent conversation with decent people, you have to be engaged in faithful communication. And you cannot do that if the other side is calling you a racist before you even get to the point and the facts on the page. And this is again supported by Democrats. Jeffries fought for this from the Democratic standpoint. Republicans fought from the Republican side. This is a uniting figure. The only person this speech pisses off is people who are idiots, dumb, should have no place in politics whatsoever. Do not take this sitting down. Fight back. That simple. Now for our second story, the biggest Supreme Court decision that landed just yesterday on Tuesday, birthright citizenship is upheld. According to CNN, NBC, Reuters, and AP, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 on Tuesday, June 30th to uphold birthright citizenship, striking down President Donald Trump's executive order that sought to limit citizenship for children born in the United States to parents who are in the country illegally or temporarily. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion, joined by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Kagan, Brown Jackson, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett. Justice Clarence Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch dissented. Trump signed the executive order on January 20th back in 2025, the first day of his second term. It was blocked by lower courts and never took effect. The court's ruling relied on the 14th Amendment and affirmed the precedent established in the 1898 case United States v. Wong Kim Ark. These articles shared 88% compatibility, but please note that at the time of gathering the information to make this podcast, we were unable to have coverage from more prominent Republican viewpoints just because it was breaking news at the time. So the right is going to be in the conversation, but not necessarily in that percent breakdown. Now, let's get all of our terms right. According to Section 1 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. That is really, really clear. If you're born in the U.S. soil, you're a citizen. There are only about 33 countries that share that law with the United States, mostly from the Americas. Republicans right now are absolutely pissed. Now, to be fair, the law was written specifically for newly freed slaves. How do we know this? Representative Thaddeus Stevens, great fucking name by the way, explaining Section 1 on the House floor in 1866, quote, Section 1 allows Congress to correct the unjust legislation of the states, so far that the law which operates upon one man shall operate equally upon all. Whatever law punishes a white man for a crime shall punish the black man precisely in the same way and to the same degree. Whatever law protects the white man shall afford equal protection to the black man. Pretty clear. So then why is the court not upholding a law meant only for freed slaves? That's the question. And that's what Trump fought for. Because Congress is absolutely fucking terrible at their job. Congress forever, clearly since 1866, have no idea how to write a law. Not specifically. The law wasn't specific at all. Despite them arguing, like it was at the time, only meant for newly freed slaves, it didn't say that. It just said, born in the USA. In other words, the three justices who voted in the dissent are acting as activists and not judges. It's not the role of the court to make policy. It's to read the Constitution and determine if laws are being enacted under its domain. And again, plain fucking English. All persons born. Couldn't be more clear. Now liberals, you're no better. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, it was the same thing. It's not the court's role to make or enact law. That's Congress's job, and they suck at it. And they have time and time and time again refused to do it. Which brings me to my second Supreme Court case that we also need to cover today. According to NPR, CBS, Fox, and the Washington Examiner, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3 along ideological lines, allowing the Trump administration to end TPS, temporary protection status, for immigrants from Haiti and Syria. Justice Samuel Alito wrote the majority opinion holding that the TPS statute bars judicial review of non-constitutional claims challenging the termination of TPS designations. The ruling affects more than 350,000 Haitian TPS holders and more than 6,000 Syrian TPS holders in the United States. Lower courts had previously postponed the terminations of TPS for both countries. The Supreme Court reversed those rulings. The court's 3 liberal justices, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Brown-Jackson, dissented. These articles shared 78% compatibility. For those of you who don't know what TPS stands for, yet it makes you really, really mad because you just get angry, let's answer a few of your questions. TPS stands for temporary, note that word, temporary protection status. It was created under the Immigration Act in 1990 to protect eligible nationals of designated countries from deportation and grants them work authorization while conditions back home remain unsafe. In other words, if you're from Haiti, you travel to the US legally, and then a civil fucking war breaks out where they're decapitating a bunch of people in gang warfare, you get to stay. As of early 2025, roughly 1.3 million people in the US were TPS holders, according to estimates based on government and census data. Over time, TPS has been granted to nationals of countries such as El Salvador, that was the first country ever enacted under the policy, Honduras, Haiti, Nicaragua, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, Yemen, and other facing war, state collapse, or major disasters happened. El Salvador was designated in 2001, and until now, it's been protected ever since. Those are over 2 decades for people who failed math, which is a lot of Americans. The Immigration Act says there is an ongoing armed conflict, and returning people there would, quote, pose a serious threat to their personal safety. The problem is 2 earthquakes and gang violence was the cause in El Salvador, but both of those issues have been addressed or entirely fixed. So why are they still here? At least that's the argument from the right. On the other hand, the left argues Haitian immigrants are being forced back to a gang-ran island that's not safe. And that's true. I wouldn't wish Haiti on anyone. Hell, I'm not going to Haiti. But does that mean the Supreme Court was wrong to side with the White House? Because that's the question here. Again, I suggest Congress sucks at their job. You suggest Supreme Court does. So let's answer that. We have to answer what was the mission of the Supreme Court and who has the power to decide TPS protections. Let's answer the second question first because it's straightforward. According to the Immigration Act itself, and I went in and read the whole thing, Congress gave the power expressly to the executive branch to designate, extend, and terminate TPS, meaning Trump is well within his legal right to say which countries are or are not on TPS, not Congress and not the Supreme Court. So why a partisan Supreme Court decision? To best cover the dissenting opinion, let's examine what Justice Kagan wrote. She stressed that the district court, quote, found as well that the plaintiffs had a likely successful equal protection claim, in part because statements made by the president showed that a racial discriminatory purpose had entered in the TPS termination. This is likely in reference to Trump saying Haitian immigrants were eating cats and dogs. Remember the old song?
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
The only problem is the executive moved to rid all TPS protections from almost all of the countries, not just Haiti. That would mean an equal distribution of the law without singling out Haiti. After all, this lawsuit itself was about Haiti and Syria. And there's another lawsuit about Venezuela. Next, Kagan wrote, quote, "True enough that TPS is a temporary program, but that did not promise the plaintiffs never-ending humanitarian protection. But the law prevents the program from ending as it likely did here, without the required consultations about country conditions, and as to Haiti, with impermissible race-based considerations tainting the decision." Only again, Haiti isn't singled out, and the situation in nearly all of the countries are safe, except for Haiti. Yes, they're third world countries, but that doesn't mean they have to be as safe as the United States for us to send them back. Lastly, Kagan wrote in her dissent that the court's approach, quote, "allows the administration to terminate TPS without guardrails, putting TPS holders in severe danger." This is a flat-out lie. She's lying about what the Immigration Act says. In plain English, if you can read, as I can and 99% of Americans can, Justice Kagan dissented with her colleagues from the Immigration Act. Quote, "The Immigration Act, subsection B5A says, designations, there is no judicial review of any termination of the Attorney General, that's the executive, with respect to the designation or termination or extension of a designation or a foreign state under this subsection. No judicial review." It's not Trump's fault that Congress is inept and wrote in the act itself that the third branch has no judicial review over the termination made by the Attorney General. And calling Trump a racist in the dissent doesn't make him a racist. And without having him say it's because they are Haitian, you have no case. So she's either a liar, illiterate, or something else. I don't know. And same with her colleagues. And the same with the 3 Republicans from the Birthright case. There is no way to misread the laws in these cases. Now, people are saying that the Republican Supreme Court majority is being completely biased here, but we've had so many cases come out this week where Republican justices didn't side with Trump. Okay, so that is complete crap. It's absolute crap. Now, some of the justices on the bench are being one-sided, but guess what? They're Republicans. That's what they do. And by the way, the Democrats were also entirely one-sided. All 3 of them voted the same way on all 3 cases. The Republicans are actually the only group that mismatched based on what the topic was. The voting pattern of the 9 justices was different between Birthright Citizen, TPS, and also on another case that we're going to have to cover next week because there's too many goddamn Supreme Court cases coming out. So the idea that somehow it's biased towards one side is complete crap. It just is. It just is. If you want better laws, then vote differently and get Congress to actually do their job and not pass it off to the executive and then cry about it when the Supreme Court doesn't take their side because they wrote a bad bill, because that's what's happening. I don't feel bad for you. I don't. Now for our next story, the Iran war is in fact not over. If you watched last week's episode, you know that I said, but now that the war is over and I am hugely skeptical of the war is actually over or not, we shall see for multiple reasons. And it seems I was correct. The war is in fact not over because of course, why would it be over? And according to CBS, CNN, Fox, and the Washington Examiner, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps struck a Singapore flag cargo ship with a drone on Thursday while the vessel was exiting the Strait of Hormuz. The attack damaged the ship's bridge on its starboard side approximately 7.5 nautical miles southeast of Dawit, Oman. No casualties or environmental impact were reported. IMO Secretary General Arsenio Dominguez announced a temporary pause on the United Nations agency's vessel evacuation operation following the attack, stating, quote, "The safety of the seafarer remains paramount." Secretary of State Marco Rubio, speaking in Bahrain, said the U.S. would judge Iran by its actions rather than rhetoric. Quote, "If ships are moving as they should be moving, then that's what we're going to judge." These articles shared 84% compatibility, which means pretty good overlap. As of Tuesday of this week, we reported in the newsletter that both parties are meeting in Doha to settle the tension, but reportedly, Iran doesn't wish to take the meeting. Also, it's been reported from both sides that the first amount of money meant to be unfrozen has not made its way to Iran. But of course, why would it? Why are we sending them money? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Why would you send Iran money when they just hit a ship and broke the deal? Why would you do that? In other words, can we just bomb Karg Island already? I thought that was what was backing this entire deal. I thought that if Iran didn't meet the terms, we would end the war once and for all. Cut off their money supply. It's that simple. No money equals no bombs. No money equals no terrorist groups. No money equals no war, and we can leave. For those who don't know, Kharg Island is where all of Iran makes all of its money. It's an island where 90% of all the oil exports run through, and if it goes up in a ball of beautiful fire, it will cripple Iran's economy for the next 3 decades plus. You want them to stop firing rockets at ships, cut off their income stream. You want people to rise up, cut off their income stream. You want them to stop funding terrorism, cut off the income stream. It's that simple. It's that simple. Left or right, I don't care. They fund terrorism. They do. That kills American lives, troops and non-troops. That's what happens. That's what I have. We actually don't know much more. I wish we did. Stay tuned. Read the newsletter. That'll keep you up to date. Before we continue to our next story, if you've made it this far into the episode, I'd like to recommend you visit thefilternewschannel.beehive.com and join our free newsletter for daily breakdowns Monday through Friday. We cover more stories and provide you with the context you need to take the world head on. Is it as exciting as listening to me talk? I don't think so, but I'm also self-centered, so who knows? Now we're going to end this week's episode a little bit differently because today is July 1st. Which means in just 3 more days, it will be the 4th of July. It's been 250 years of American independence, a milestone that no other modern nation has ever reached. Not Germany, not France, not Turkey, not anyone. And in these times, an American pride for the nation is an all-time low, as we covered last week, at least on the left. Why, I don't know. I want to leave you with more facts. And to be clear, these facts don't change whether you love or hate the country. They're just facts. In honor of our great nation, here's what we've accomplished in the last 250 years. Things that all Americans ought to be proud of. No, all of humanity should be proud of, because that's what we're talking about here. So let's begin. In 1955, Jonas Salk invented the polio vaccine, which eliminated a disease that paralyzed 58,000 Americans per year. That single vaccine has prevented 18 million childhood deaths globally. Polio went from one of humanity's primary killers to essentially non-existent. We took HIV from a death sentence to a chronic condition. We've made malaria an inside joke. We assembled the greatest scientific minds 20 years before the internet was invented, which again, the US did, and harnessed the power of atoms. Yes, to make a bomb, but also to create infinite power. But of course, it's too harmful for the environment, which it's not. That was a lie. So we turned back the clock and started burning coal again. Greta Thunberg, thank you so much. Heart attack deaths down 70% since 1990. Tuberculosis essentially eradicated. Childhood cancer survival now at 70% since 1980. Not because of Spain, not because of socialist principles in Sweden or Norway, no. Because of the US. 1.2 billion people lifted out of poverty since 1990. Approximately 40% is traceable to American trade, investment, and business models. That's 480 million people who don't live in subsistence because of American economics. As Americans, we've lost touch with what the default setting of life is. Because I promise you, it's not Chipotle orders from your phone and people waiting politely to check out at CVS. It's disease, it's murder, it's starvation, and it's war. That's the default. That is what humanity was forever until now, because of America. People list human rights as though they're innate, but nothing could be further from the truth. There are no rights on Earth, not in a primitive sense. The bunny rabbit doesn't ask the bear not to eat it. No. It took blood, sweat, and tears from average men and women who fought to create a new method of governance that has become so unique and powerful that it's forced the entire world to shift toward a new reality. A reality where those defaults are so distant, we think they no longer exist. Oh, isn't that cute? Unless, of course, you live in countries where they're still prevalent, mainly anywhere that isn't Western society, like Haiti, or Cuba, or Tanzania, or Zambia. Have you been there? I have. Or Tibet or Laos. Have you been there? I have. They're full of dying people who need American-made medicine and technology to save their children and extend their lives by a magnitude of 2 or 3 times. It turns out those billionaires, who you hate so much, have created companies that save lives. And the poorest of societies don't have time to tweet about their hatred from Starbucks with free Wi-Fi because they're too busy being lifted out of poverty from the invention of solar panels created by, drumroll please, Americans. Or being delivered life-saving drugs by an Amazon drone. Again, fuck Jeff Bezos, am I right? Because of American cancer research, we've prevented 3.8 million deaths that would have happened. Not treated after the fact, prevented from happening. 50 million Americans born in the bottom 20% of earners will leave that bracket in their lifetime. Compare it to Germany, 25%, France, 22%, Japan, 20%. America moves people up faster than any developed nation on Earth. Life expectancy, in 1900 it was 47. 47. Today it's 78. That's not gradual, that's a 66% increase in human lifespan in a single century. Mostly due to American medicine and innovation. Child mortality, in 1900 it was 100 per 1,000 children. Today it's 5.4. We've made childhood birth safe. Children don't die anymore from prevented causes. But of course, young people no longer want to have kids because of course it's horribly unsafe. Now that's not true, but facts don't matter. But climate change will make it so we won't even have an Earth left. Only Al Gore said that we'd all be dead by now, and somehow he was horribly wrong. Bernie said we had 10 years left in 2016. It's been 10 years, Bernie. But why have these predictions been wrong? Because the United States of America is home to the most innovative humans to ever exist, and we can invent a solution to any problem we face. And it's not the socialists doing it, it's not the communists doing it, it is capitalists in America. Democrats and Republicans give enough time, energy, and yes, capital. So for all of you at home who hate capitalism, know that without it, hundreds of millions of people would die each year from a bug bite. Starvation would be the default, and the Iran war would end with a single bomb falling out of the sky and instantaneously removing 90 million people from Earth. America may not be perfect, and in all honesty, it never will be. It won't. Perfection isn't possible. But if you have your feet tucked away in a pair of sweatshop Nikes that enslaved Chinese Uyghur Muslim lost a finger to make, wearing pants that Lao children stitched, wearing a ring poor Congolese slave boys dug out of the ground, texting on a Chinese-made iPhone, while sipping Starbucks coffee handpicked by African women making 5 cents per day to feed their dying babies, shut the fuck up. Put the phone down, be happy you were born on the right piece of rock that isn't about to slip into the ocean because people far smarter and more resourceful than you won't let it happen. And if you want to make a real impact, stop buying foreign crap. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite. America is a great nation, the greatest ever, and without us, the earth would be a scary place. Thank you to all those great Americans who have come before and made this country what it is today. And thank you to those Americans who continue to work to improve our nation and make it into the promise we set out to create, both on the left and the right, because history is full of Democrats and Republicans doing great things. Though it may not be true today, I am certain in the future it will be. And not because of those texting online about how much they love or hate Trump, but because of the people who keep their head down, work hard, and invent some of the most wonderful pieces of technology that have quite literally ever been invented. They will save humanity from barbarianism and transformed it and will transform it even further into an unbelievable reality that exists today and will exist in the future. So thank you to everyone who work on big, important projects. Because of your dedication, the world is the safest it has ever been. The future only looks bright because of you and your hard work. I am truly thankful to be an American. That's it for me. I am Wes Clark. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it was a little bit weird there, but I think it was nonpartisan. Let me know in the comments down below. Maybe this one was a little one-sided, but you know, I'm not here to fight for socialists or communists. I'm here to fight for America, and that means Democrat and Republican. And quite frankly, I don't believe Democrats or Republicans are socialists or communists. We never have been, never will be. So believe it or not, still nonpartisan. That's it for me. Thank you very much. I'm Wes Clark. Enjoy your 4th of July. I will be out there at the pool, waving my flag, enjoying the sun. Peace.